One day, just as the sun was dropping and the moon was rising, a weary family arrived at the edge of a small city. Their car was almost out of gas. They were very tired. Their tummies rumbled with hunger. Cried the baby.
I'm hungry,
Whined the child.
I'm exhausted,
Moaned the father.
I'm worried.
Stated the mother.
Surely someone in this fine city can help.
Now this city, like most cities, had some people who were rich and some who were poor, but they generally all had good hearts. However, they were practical and very cautious about giving too much to strangers. Just in case something went wrong in their own lives, they wanted to be prepared. When they looked out their windows and saw the weary family, they said,
"Look, strangers!"
Close the curtains!
turn off the lights.
Hide the food and the money.
And that's precisely what they did. The weary family came to the first house, a small white townhouse with a green door. They knocked gently, and a young couple answered the door. Cooed the baby.
May I please use your bathroom?
Pleaded the child.
We've been traveling to find work and are hungry.
Moaned the father.
Please, kind-hearted people, we need your help.
Stated the mother.
Sorry.
Said the young couple in unison.
We have a child of our own to feed. No extra rooms and no money to spare.
Have you tried social services?
And closed the door. The young couple was indeed tight on cash, as they were saving for their child's education plan. The weary family sighed deeply and went on their way. Soon they came to a cute yellow brick house with a blue door. They knocked gently, and a man dressed in smart business clothes answered the door. Gurgled the baby.
May I please use your bathroom?
Begged the child.
We've arrived in town for a job interview and are hungry.
Moaned the father.
Please, kind-hearted man, we need your help.
Stated the mother.
Sorry,
Said the businessman.
I have a business to take care of, employees to pay, and nothing to spare. Have you tried the food bank?
And firmly shut the door. The businessman was indeed tight on cash, as he was planning to expand his business throughout the city. The weary family sighed deeper and went on their way, going from door to door. At every home, the answer was always a polite,
Sorry.
The people of the city were always quick with excuses.
Now is not a good time.
They were saving for retirement.
We can't.
They were storing food in case of a pandemic.
We're on a tight budget.
The price of groceries had gone up.
Maybe next year.
Their fridge was empty because they were going on vacation. The baby was crying. The child finally gave in and peed behind a tree. The father was sitting on the curb, distraught, as he was the one who could not find work. The mother, however, was thinking.
The people here have a lot to learn. Let's teach them how to share a little so that everyone has enough.
She quietly whispered the details of her plan to her weary family. Soon the baby dozed off smiling. The child ran to collect sticks for a fire. The father dug through the trunk of the car, crammed with all they owned, until he pulled out an empty pot and ladle. The mother filled the pot with fresh water from a garden tap. Together, they started the fire in the busy town square and set the large pot of water on the top. When the water started bubbling, the family got into their positions. The baby still slept. The child asked in a loud voice,
Why are we making so much for dinner?
The father projected his reply.
We want to help the people of this fine city, as they have nothing.
The child, right on cue, asked.
And what is it we shall make?
The mother almost sung her answer.
We are going to make a pot of the most delicious and nutritious stone soup.
Oh, stone soup.
cheered the father and child together. The people of the city became extremely curious. First, the businessman came out, then the young couple with their child. They had heard of lots of soups, but never stone soup. The businessman asked the weary family,
How exactly do you make stone soup?
The baby snored. The child whispered.
First, we need the secret ingredients.
The father reached into a small bag, held up 3 smooth stones, and plunked them, 1, 2, 3, into the pot of boiling water. He exclaimed,
Soon we will have a feast.
The mother stirred the pot with the ladle and licked her lips, waving the imaginary aroma towards herself. She took on a dream-like expression. Soon the word spread. The people of the town phoned, texted, and posted to each other about this unexpected feast. In the town square, a crowd formed around the weary family. The baby hiccuped. The child held his breath. The father took a long sip of the warm stone broth as everyone leaned in to see his response. He bellowed joyfully.
Absolutely delicious. All it needs is a little salt and pepper.
Before the mother could respond, the businessman said,
I have salt and pepper at home. I'll be right back.
After stirring the seasoned pot a while, the mother tasted the soup.
Ooh, this is splendid. If only we just had an onion, it would be perfect.
Immediately, an older man from the crowd spoke up.
I have onions.
With his walker, he disappeared into an Ontario cottage across the street and emerged with onions in hand. The baby drooled. The child cheered.
Yay!
The father chopped up the onions and tossed them into the pot. The mother blew on the spoon, held it to the child's lips, and everyone waited for the child's response. The child looked up and announced,
Potatoes! That's all it needs and it will be the best stone soup ever!
At once, a little girl jumped on her skateboard and shouted.
We have potatoes, fresh from the garden.
A boy on his bike called out.
I love carrots! Can we put carrots in the soup?
Soon, the entire city was involved with many people coming and going, bringing
Barley.
Turnips.
Tomatoes!
Dumplings.
Noodles.
Tofu.
Seaweed.
Chicken!
Kohlrabi.
Rutabagas.
Bacon.
Broccoli.
Ginger!
Lemongrass.
Peas.
Corn.
and parsley for spice. The baby bounced happily on a grandmother's knee. The child led the other kids to bring tables and lawn chairs and bowls and spoons. The fathers all came forward to help dice and chop and add ingredients, stirring them into the soup. The mothers talked about how great it was that this new and talented family had chosen to come to their city. Finally, when the pot could hold no more, the mayor of the city was invited to taste the stone soup. She drew the spoon to her lips and took a long sip as the crowd watched with anticipation. After a moment of reflection, she affirmed with authority,
I officially declare that this is the best stone soup this city has ever tasted.
and with that, everyone lined up with their bowls and spoons as the weary family ladled out enough for every single person in the city. And there was even enough broth for the babies. Local restaurants and bakers brought out bread and beverages, and the town's musicians, poets, and acrobats drew loud applause. As the evening drew to a close, and people began to say their goodnights, the young couple, from the small white townhouse with the green door, jumped up on a table with their young child.
We want to thank this strange, new family. Not only did they make us the best stone soup ever,
They have also taught us all a very important lesson. If we each share a little, we will all have enough.
And with that, the people laughed and hugged. The young couple offered the weary family a place to spend the night, and then they all pitched in to clean up before a good night of restful sleep. The baby nursed. The child dreamed. The father relaxed. He had made some connections for a job. The mother smiled peacefully and drifted off to sleep. The end.
Hi there, I'm Chef Denny from Surreal, and today we are going to make some stone soup. We're going to do this for the House of Blessing. It's going to give us a big sense of community. The whole point of stone soup is to show that if we all give a little, we can all have enough.
But first things first, we need some ingredients. Just like the soup in the story, ours will be made up of ingredients from all over the place.
So we're going to press in our garlic, and that'll break loose our clove. And then we're going to use the blade of our wide knife, press down, and that will release all that loose skin. When you're using garlic right away, you might want to mince it, but if you're not using it right away, it's better to cut it. And so we're just going to chop it, okay? Because it's not going to get used right away. Just go one way, and then the other way. We need a half a tablespoon, and we're going to need another clove. And we have our half a tablespoon of cut garlic for their soup.
Just prepping these for soup Surreal. So the best way that I like to cut them, make sure your knife is nice and sharp, and just score the onion, turn it, and just make sure they're nice and fine.
So today we are going to boil penne noodles for the soup that's going to be made. Right now we have water boiling that we're going to add salt to. You add the salt, season the water. And that's rapidly boiling. And then we'll add the pasta noodles to it. Now on the box it says to boil the pasta for 11 minutes. When we make soup, we don't boil it for the full duration of the time, because when you're adding it to the soup, what's going to happen is the pasta is going to cook more in the making of the soup. So we want to get it so that it is kind of parboiled, so it's kind of less than al dente, just so that it doesn't overcook on us, because it'll go really to a mushy paste when you have it in the soup if it's too overcooked. You just want to make sure that it's still going to be crunchy. So we're going to set the timer for 6 minutes just to see if that's going to be about the proper amount of time, just so that they aren't overcooked. The last thing we want is to have them overcooked, because like I said, in the hot soup, they're going to be cooking more. And then the salt's basically added just so that the pasta has more flavor going into the soup. The other ingredients of the soup will basically enhance the seasoning of the noodles also. The noodles are kind of like a sponge. They're basically taking on the flavors of the other components of the soup. So you just want to get it so that everything absorbs evenly. So you can see there that it's probably about a quarter of the way now with the boiling of the water. And the water is boiling quite rapidly so that you'll have an even cook on the pasta. And then after this is done, that we get it to the point, we're going to put it into a colander and then cool it down right away so that it's not going to overcook. It'll basically stop the cooking process, and then we'll basically cut it so it'll be ready to add to the other ingredients of the soup. If you didn't cook the noodles first before you cut it up, they would just end up shattering on you. That's why you want to get it to a point where it's pliable, so you can cut it up to the proper size that you want. All pasta is basically at a different size. You have to look at the pasta that you're using to see if you need to cut it or not. If it's already smaller, you don't need to cut it. If it's way too large, then you cut it down to a size you want it so that it's going to fit onto a regular size soup spoon, so that it's easier to manage when you're having your bowl of soup. Soup's one of those things that's comfort food. It's fun to basically make. Anybody can basically make soup and just enjoy it, especially with these fall days that we're having now and getting into the winter months. It really brings the comfort of home in your cooking, which everyone just enjoys. You want to keep stirring it just so it doesn't stick to the bottom of your pot. Usually a rapid boil on the water will keep that from occurring, but just to make sure that nothing sticks, you just keep stirring it. Okay, so that's our halfway mark. Our timer just went off on the 6 minutes. And you basically take a look at it and you see that the pasta now is like par cooked. So it's basically halfway through. A knife will go through there very easy. Another way that you can check it too is by just trying a piece of pasta, and you'll be able to tell that it's cooked enough so that you can use it. Okay, so now what we'll do is we're going to drain. So you just use any strainer, whatever you have. And remember, this part is crucial because you want it to stop the cooking process. So you want to add cold water to it to basically get it so that it's not going to cook anymore, because it's already at your point. If you cook it too much, then your pasta will just go mushy. Okay, and then we just put it into a bowl, like so. Okay, and then the way it is to be is cut in half. Basically take the pasta and cut it in half. So just remember, the reason why we're doing that is so that it is spoon size. So you've got that, so it works out well. So if the pasta is bigger, you might have to cut it into more than 2, but that's the perfect size.
Hi, my name's Toby. I'm one of the butchers here at the Butcher Baker in Stratford, Ontario. Today we're going to be grinding up some AAA outside round beef for Derek down at Soup Surreal for the empty bowl stone soup. And let's get it grinded here. Here we are. Just gotta get this out of Soup Surreal.
Hi, I'm Mallie from Mercer Beer Hall. Today I'm going to be cutting a carrot for the stone soup. Normally when cutting a carrot, I would cut off the edge here so that it's flat when you're cutting it, just so it doesn't roll over and your fingers roll underneath it. I have done that. But for the shape that we're going for today, you don't want to do that because it'll change the shape. Just cut it in half. Half again, and you get these little bite-sized triangle pieces. So the way you want to hold your hands is so that your fingers are kind of like curled under when you're holding it, and the knife is pressed up against it. If you hold it like this, you got a better chance of hitting your fingers, right? When you go like this, it'll hit your knuckle first, and that's the proper way to hold it.
How you doing? My name is Dave Sharples. I'm owner and operator of Dave's Diner in Sebringville. And today we're making a beef stock. Now the first thing you need to do is you got to get some bones, some beef bones with lots of marrow in it. Okay, you throw that in the oven for about an hour. You roast it just to get things bubbling away. And then you get a pot. Now I've already started the stock, but I'm going to add stuff to it just so you know. So you get your bones, you throw your bones in the water, you fill it up with water, then you got to add some vegetables. It's pretty much celery, carrots, onions, there's garlic, there's thyme, bay leaves, parsley already in there. So we're just going to add this. It's all rough cut, all raw. Just add it in there. Okay, and you leave this on the stove, and you let it come to a rolling boil, and then you simmer it for about 6 to 8 hours. You strain it, you let it cool. When it cools, you'll have a little bit of grease from the bones on top. You just take that off because it will be solidified, and you have your stock for the soup. And you go from there.
Have you or anyone you know ever struggled with hunger or food insecurity? If you're comfortable sharing, please tell us about this experience.
I personally have not, but I do know of people in my adult life that are struggling, like to this day, with food, and like I said, homelessness. And you know, it's very sad. I see it every day at the grocery store. People wait in line at the grocery store, and people, you know, they get the coupons out just to try to save that, you know, 30 cents on a bag of potatoes or something. It's very sad to see, and you know, I'm not going to mention any names, but yeah, I do know people in my own personal group of friends that is struggling, and what do you do, right? You know, they rely on some government support, and again, the House of Blessing helps out. and you just try to do your part, and hopefully things get better.
Dave, you have been a strong supporter of Stratford House of Blessing by participating in empty bowls each year and through a great offer in the past for savings. Why do you choose to support Stratford House of Blessing?
Because Stratford House of Blessing has a service that people in this country unfortunately need. You can go through any city, any little town in Canada, and you can find homeless people, you can find people that are don't have enough money for food. And what you guys provide is just amazing. And, you know, being an owner of a restaurant with, you know, I always have food here. You know, I'm glad we can help participate in getting you to help feed the community. Because without I live in the community, and it's sad to see people that are struggling. And if I can do whatever I can do, I will do that.
If there's one thing that goes great with stone soup, it's bread. Thank you, Downey Street Bakehouse. And now, back to Derek.
So first things first, we're gonna put our stone stock on. We're gonna place our beautiful washed stones into our pot, and we're gonna add our beef stock to that. And this is how we make stone broth. We're just gonna put the stone stock right on the stove and get that going for a little bit. Just on low, and it'll be ready when we need it. First things first, we're going to talk about our ingredients a little bit. You have the recipe. Our ingredients are as follows. We have our diced carrots, diced onions. We've got our lovely cooked penne that's already been cut in threes. The reason we cut it in threes is just to make it a little better for your spoon. Let the younger ones be able to get some of everything on their spoon as they're trying to eat their delicious stone soup. Then we have our lovely kidney beans, which have been pre-rinsed. And we have our ground beef ready to go. And this is not frozen, this is fresh. There are instructions in case that you are cooking with frozen ground beef. It's not a big deal, you can start from frozen. We have our chopped garlic. And we have our wonderful spice mix. That's going to give it all the love, all the flavor. We have our tomatoes, which are yet to be crushed. We'll be doing that shortly. And that's everything that we need for right now. We've got our stone stock on. We're going to get right into toasting the spices. So now that we know we have all of our ingredients, we're going to make sure that we get our pot on. Just nice low heat for this first step. You can go a little bit higher than low heat, but you don't want to go too high. What we want to see is we want to see this pan get just warm enough to toast our spices. That's the first step for this. We're going to toast our spices to the point where they're just about to start smoking. You don't want to see too much smoke. You just want your house to smell amazing. That's what you want right now. So we're going to take a look here, and we're just going to put our hand over it. Not on it, just over it, just to see if it's warm enough. Get in there. We're going to have our spoon ready, our pot's ready to go. If you need a cloth for your pot here, you're going to have that ready to go too. And as soon as we think it's warm enough, that's when we add our spices. Again, not too hot, and stirring constantly. Just a nice light toast. And I can smell it already. And again, just stirring constantly. Nothing is smoking yet. Nothing to worry about. No stress. You can do this with all your soups, all your curries. Anytime you're putting spices into something, I always recommend toasting them a little bit first. And now I can see that they're starting to smoke. Okay, that's when we know we want to stop. We're going to keep stirring, and we're going to dump it right into that big mixing bowl. Make sure that they're all good. And we're going to set that aside. That's going to be really handy for us later. Okay, the next step is we're going to put our ground beef on. This is when we want to get a little bit of browning, but it doesn't have to be torched to the pot. We just want to get some browning, get some flavor in there, make sure the beef is fully cooked. So again, we're going to go to about a medium heat to medium low. And it's in your comfort level. It's what, if you're able to stay on the pot the whole time, you can turn it up higher if you want to eat sooner. but this is more of a comfort level. So we're gonna get our ground beef going. Again, we're just looking to brown it lightly and make sure that it's fully cooked. We're gonna break it up a little bit as we go. And I always like to season my ground beef a little bit with salt. Nothing crazy. You don't want it to overwhelm the soup. You just want to add a little bit as you go to cook it. So we're going to add that ground beef. And you don't need any oil in here. As long as your temperature is not too hot when you start with it, there should be enough fat in the beef itself to make sure that you're getting what you need. Stir that in. Again, my heat is on sort of low to medium low. And we're just stirring to make sure that we're not sticking too much. It's still browning in the pot. And it's breaking up. And if you're ever worried that it's sticking too much, you're always welcome to add a little bit of water to it just to deglaze the pan, get all that browning off the pan, and then you can sort of restart with your heat. Alright, and I gotta show it seasoning. So this is when we want to add our salts to our ground beef. It's going to be just a little bit, just to get things going, just to give the flavor of the beef really in there. We don't want to be too much with this one. Just a little bit of salt. And it's a preference thing. What does your family prefer? What are they looking for in the flavor there? So we can see that our beef is starting to clump up a little bit. Maybe I'm not doing the best job of stirring it up, but I have a special chef's trick that's going to help you out here. Can you grab me the potato masher?
Sure.
All right. Thank you. So you're just going to take your potato masher and you're going to mash it around just like this. Good fun. Give it a stir with the masher and you're just going to break that up, and that's my big chef's trick. That's going to really help you out. And you can use that anytime for any type of cooked ground beef. It just helps it break it up, gives you a little bit more confidence as you're going into adding into the spices. All right, so our beef is all ready. It's done being cooked. It's got a nice brown color to it. Now's the point where we want to take it out of the pot. We're going to add to the spices, and this is a great job for someone else in your household who maybe isn't right on the stove, but they can stir the spices in while you're getting your next ingredients in the pot. So Ashley, can you please help us stir the spices in?
Sure.
So I'm just gonna get all that lovely ground beef right into that bowl where we left our spices. And would you be willing to stir that for me?
Absolutely.
And we're just gonna stir until all the spices coat all the beef. That's gonna help us build that flavor.
Sounds good.
While she's doing that, I'm gonna make sure that my pot's back on the heat. I've looked at my temperature here, and we're looking at about medium to medium low again. And we're gonna add our onions and our carrots and then eventually our garlic. Get all the carrots in there. And all our onions in there. Beautiful. And at this point, you're gonna wanna, just like with the ground beef, you're gonna wanna add a little bit of salt. Just a little bit, and all that's going to do is draw out the liquid from the carrots and onions, and it's going to help sweat the vegetables. That's what we're doing right now. We're sweating the vegetables. It's going to make them just slightly soft. It's going to release their flavors, and we're going to be ready to add the rest of the ingredients once that step is complete. Grab this here. Oops, sorry. Grab my salt again, and again, like probably a half teaspoon of salt to a teaspoon. And you're just going to add that to the pot. Stir it in really well. And now we have our vegetables sweating. This is going to take about 10 minutes depending on how high your heat is. So we're just going to let this go for a bit. In the meantime, we can talk about crushing our tomatoes because that's going to be one of our next steps. Ashley, would you help me crush some tomatoes for the soup?
I can do that first.
All right. So all you're gonna do here is we're gonna take these tomatoes, pour them into a nice big bowl, and then you're just gonna take those tomatoes and break them up with your hands and fingers and make them small. What we're doing here is just having a little bit of fun. We're giving the soup some character. They're gonna explode on you and everything, we're just gonna give it a nice texture. No one's getting a whole tomato on their soup spoon. They're just getting little pieces. It's gonna help sort of break up the juice and allow that to dissipate through the whole soup.
Looks like we're doing pretty good. The texture's pretty broken up, so there's a little bit of a juice to it, and a little bit of the pieces.
That's awesome. So we're almost looking for like a little bit of a pulp or almost a tomato puree, but with just a couple little pieces. So we're going to just talk a little bit about the ingredients that are in this recipe. Now, when we're talking about seasoning a soup, we want to look at everything that's going into the pot and make sure that we're not adding too much salt as we go throughout the process. Some of these ingredients, when you buy them in the store, you might get them in your hamper from the House of Blessing. They're going to have some salt in them already. We need to make sure that we compensate for that we're not over seasoning the soup before it's even finished. So the best way we can do with that is look at the nutrition facts and give a better judgment call for our family, our friends, whoever we're making the soup for, and just sort of decide from the get-go how much salt we want to add. So the first thing we're going to look at is our tomatoes. The tomatoes have a small amount of salt in there. You can see it's a 10% value for about half the can to a third of the can. Next we're going to look at our kidney beans, and again it's not going to be a crazy amount of salt, but it's in there. There's some salt in this kidney beans, so we want to make sure that we're being mindful of that as we're adding it to the soup itself. Of course, our beef stock, if it's going to be store-bought, it's going to have salt in it almost for sure. Some will be sodium reduced and some will not be. So when we look at that again, we're going to see, and this one is again going to be a little higher sodium. So we're going to be mindful of that as we're adding it as well, and as we're adding our salt. We might need to adjust our recipe by adding a little bit of water at the end. It depends on what it tastes like for you. So lastly, we're going to look at our chili powder. Now this is a no-name brand store-bought chili powder. Nothing wrong with using these ingredients, they're great ingredients. What we need to be mindful of again is A, salt, and B, when you're looking at chili powder for your recipe, make sure that it doesn't say hot chili powder. If it says hot chili powder, there's a good chance that it's literally just ground up chilies. That's not what we want for this recipe. We want the chili powder that is a mix of spices, okay? And for the mix of spices, we're gonna see that this has paprika, chili pepper, cumin, salt, coriander, garlic, oregano, and cloves. A bunch of spices that are actually in this recipe already. So we're kind of taking that chili powder, we're bumping it up with our favorite spices to make it a little bit more personalized. So just take a look at your chili powder, make sure that you have those extra ingredients in there, and double check your salt content. Of course, we want to make sure that we're not over seasoning with this. Alright, so we're just about done sweating out our vegetables, and when we get to that just about done stage, what we really want to do is add our chopped garlic. It's going to take no time to cook, but we want to add it right when we're almost ready with those vegetables. Now, it's a personal preference thing, but I like my onions to be translucent. That's sort of the definition of sweating out your vegetables. And then that's when I like to add my garlic. Once you can sort of see through the onions, then you can add your garlic, stir it in, and then begin to add your other ingredients. So we're just going to do that right now, add our garlic. And if your house doesn't already smell fantastic, it's going to smell really good right now. We're just stirring that garlic in. Again, we haven't changed our heat at all. It's still on that medium-low to medium setting. And we're just going to give that garlic 1 to 2 minutes to cook. It's very small, so it shouldn't take very long. While we're waiting for that to cook, we can make sure that our beef has all been stirred in with the spices, and that's ready to go. and the tomatoes, which are going to go in just at the same time here. And so it looks like we are ready here with our garlic. Garlic's all cooked, vegetables are all sweated out. Now we can add our ground beef, our tomatoes, and then our stone stock all simultaneously so that we can really start bringing this to a nice simmer. And we're almost there. So first our beef. Get all the beef in there. You can see it's nicely coated in the spices. Ashley did a really good job of getting that beef stirred up with the spices. Stir that in. There we go. Next we're going to add our crushed tomatoes. Alright. Now all of our tomatoes are in there. Perfect. Now that that's all stirred in, now we can add our stone stock. So we're just going to take that off the pot there. And at this point we want to remove our stones. They've already contributed all that wonderful sense of community and that flavor, so we can remove the stones from the stone stock and start to make this stone soup into more of a Texan beef noodle soup. Beautiful. At this point that we want to add our water as well. We just had that half a cup of water, and that's just, the water is just there to compensate for the natural reduction of the soup as it simmers. And again, it's also to compensate for the amount of salt that will be in the stock and the tomatoes. We want to make sure that it has something to work with when it starts to reduce and simmer. So it's at this stage that we can just bring this to a slight simmer. So I'm going to turn up my heat until it starts to do that. Once it simmers, we want it back on low just for a few minutes, and then we're going to add our kidney beans, simmer it again, and then we'll be all ready to season and taste. And it's at this point that I'm stirring and I'm looking at this and getting that wonderful sense of community. Look at all the wonderful ingredients that people have offered us so that everyone can share. Alright, so it looks like our soup has just started to come to a nice low simmer. At this point, everything in there is fully cooked. So what we can do is add our kidney beans. The reason why we're adding them so late is because when you get canned kidney beans, they are already cooked. They're nice and soft. So we don't want to overcook them, but we do want them to incorporate with the soup. And the way to do that is to add them sort of last minute, but give them a little simmer. So what we're going to do, we're going to add the kidney beans right into the pot as it's simmering. Try not to splash yourself too much. There we go. And now again, we're just going to simmer for about 8 to 10 minutes on low, and then we should be able to turn our heat off, season the soup, and see how it tastes. Okay, so it looks like our soup is done simmering. It's been about 10 minutes since the kidney beans have been in there. We're going to take it off the heat, just like so. We're going to make sure we don't burn ourselves as well. You can leave it on the stove. I just wouldn't leave it on the burner that's hot still, because at this point we just want to stir it a little bit and get a feel for where we're at with salt. The only thing you should technically be adding to this right now is salt or water. If it's too salty, add a bit of water. If it's not quite where your palate wants it to be, add a little bit of salt, okay? And a little chef's trick for you on this one is to take the spoon, instead of reaching the spoon in, you can taste multiple times with one spoon and have less dishes if you use your spoon or a ladle that you've been stirring with. So we're just going to do that, and we're just tasting the broth at this moment. Give it a smell. It smells amazing. Always a good sign. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I know that I know what I'm doing here, but I'm pretty sure that that's bang on. So if you were not comfortable with it, again, add a little water or a little salt. There's a couple things to be pointing out right now. We have your iodized salt. Everyone knows this salt. You all have it in your homes. It works and it's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with it. I typically use kosher salt. Kosher salt's a little less intense. With the iodized salt, you're going to want to use a little less than with the kosher salt, okay? So if you're using kosher salt, you might need to use a little bit more than what our recipe asks for. At this point, our soup's hot. It's ready to go. Family ready to go, ready to eat. Are you ready to eat? This is the point where we can decide, okay, do we want to pour it over rice or do we want to pour it over noodles? So we've got some cut penne, as you saw earlier. So these noodles have been cooked and then cut in 3 so that they fit on your spoon. And you can just pour the cooked noodles. They don't have to be hot. They can just go in the bottom of the pot, or sorry, bottom of the bowl, and you can pour your soup right over it. So that allows each person in the family to have a different amount of noodles, no noodles, or rice, whatever they prefer. Now it's important also to encourage you to garnish this soup. You can garnish this soup with almost whatever you want. Think about tacos, sour cream, cheese, cilantro, lime juice, lime wedges, whatever you want to make it a little bit more fun and bright. I really recommend sour cream and nachos, a little side of bread maybe. The other thing to add in here is when it gets to this stage, just before it's done, if you want, if you have diced peppers, if you have frozen corn or frozen peas, if you want to add a couple things, more character to your family or to bump up the recipe, right before it's done is when you add those peppers, corn, or peas, or something like that. Gives you a little bit more to work with. It makes it a little bit more fun. After all that, after you're done enjoying your soup, you're done working with all your dishes and cleaning up, okay, now I've got a pot of soup in the fridge. I'm going to cool it. What am I going to do with it? Well, the kids don't want it tomorrow. Now's when you come out with your sour cream containers or your plastic Tupperware and you decide, okay, I'm going to portion 2 bowls of soup with noodles and freeze it. That's when you're going to add your noodles and freeze it. Put it in the freezer, mark it Texan beef noodle soup, stone soup for later, and you're going to always have a couple meals out of a pot like this. At Soup Surreal, we like to participate in empty bowls every year. It's such a great event. It's fully community oriented. It shows off Stratford's sense of community. It brings people together. It gets everybody's bowl filled with something delicious, and it's just an overwhelming sense of taking care of each other. And those events also create awareness for the Stratford House of Blessing. So please look into the House of Blessing, please join Empty Bowls, and please share and like and enjoy this video. We want as many people to know how much they help our community as possible, and we want to continue to give them the support they need to help those in need.